Hello and welcome to Filling the Sink, a podcast from Catalan News. My name's Lorcan Doherty and today we're talking about cybersecurity. On Sunday morning, the 5th of March, Hospital Clínic, a leading public hospital in Barcelona, revealed it had fallen victim to a cyber attack. With its website down, surgery and appointments were cancelled, staff had to resort to pen and paper, ambulances were rerouted to other hospitals, and hackers demanded $4.5 million to secure compromised data. Coming up in this week's podcast, we'll hear from several cybersecurity experts on how and why attacks like these happen and what can be done to prevent them. I'm joined today by Catalan News journalist Cillian Shields. Hello, Cillian.
Lorcan, how are you?
I'm good, Cillian. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Let's get up to speed. Why are we talking about cyber attacks today then?
Well, Hospital Clínic, as you mentioned, has suffered what looks to be a pretty severe cyber attack. A group of hackers essentially has infiltrated their systems with a ransomware, which is a particular style of cyber attack. And this has prevented the medical staff from accessing their own internal data, their own internal systems. And this has essentially caused havoc within the hospital. Sensitive patient data has been effectively stolen. And that has a dual problem. One, the medical staff can't access it, which means they might not know what exactly the situation is with this patient right in front of them. And then two, the cyber criminals are threatening to release it, which is obviously a bad thing for people to have their medical records published.
That's the ransom side of it. And how has it affected the hospital's operations then?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, it's causing a bit of chaos. In the first week alone, it's been 2 weeks now, but in the first week, Hospital Clínic's medical director, Anthony Castells, said that over 300 elective surgeries and 11,000 outpatient visits had to be postponed, as well as 4,000 blood and urine tests.
And now into the second week, things are starting to get a little bit closer to normal.
Exactly, yeah. The hospital's getting back on their feet. We've got a lot more of the scheduled operations taking place. The vast majority, 90% of scheduled inpatient surgeries are now back going ahead. A bit under half, 40% of outpatient surgeries are going ahead. And 70% of specialist consultations are also back taking place at the hospital.
Cillian, the people behind this attack, the perpetrators, have demanded $4.5 million US.
Yeah, like eye-watering sums, isn't it? It's this group, Ransom House. That's the name of the group of cyber criminals that have perpetrated this attack. And in the week of the attack, the Catalan Telecommunications Secretary, Sergi Marcén, he explained to the world that the group, Ransom House, had been in touch with, the authorities, the hospital itself, made their demands clear. In response to that, the Catalan authorities have also made it clear that they have absolutely no intention of paying this sum.
He said the government aren't going to pay a cent. He was very clear about it.
Very, very, very clear. Marcén added that the criminals told them that they were able to access 4 terabytes of leaked data, but the authorities were not sure which exact data that is.
This week, Cillian, you've been speaking to a lot of cybersecurity experts. We're going to hear from some of them. One, David López, actually had something very interesting to say when it comes to paying these ransoms in general.
Yes, exactly, yeah. He is an expert at the cybersecurity company, IPM, and he explained to me the importance of not paying these kinds of ransoms whenever they pop up. There's a couple of different reasons why it's very important to not pay, because, well, one, paying the ransom encourages these types of attacks. It shows that it's a profitable endeavour.
Crime pays.
That's it, yeah, exactly. But also, by paying, this would give the criminals more money to then fund their operations, more money to create more sophisticated malware to carry out these kinds of attacks.
That's true. You're essentially financing the improvements in their tech or whatever.
This is exactly it. And it's just a bad route to go down. It's probably going to cause more problems in the long run.
Another expert that we spoke to this week is Marc Torrens. He is Associate Professor at the ESADE Business School here in Barcelona. And he told us what Hospital Clínic can do now, also why hospitals are being regularly targeted, and first, how a cyber attack like this works.
How it works is, well, as you know, we are living in this hyper-connected world, right? And these organizations have thousands of computers that are connected through the internet. So whenever there is just one single computer that has some kind of way of entering from third-party malware, then there is that risk, right? Once you are within the system, then it's pretty easy to put malware. In this case, it's a ransomware, which means that it's a kind of software that is encrypting all the files within the network of computers. The data cannot be read if you don't have the necessary security keys. So if you don't have the key to de-encrypt those files, the system becomes unusable because the software cannot access the data. We are not prepared for this type of attacks, and it's a huge amount of data, so these are not just small databases that you can restore with a backup copy or something like that, right?
The amount of data that hospitals have, is that one of the main reasons why hospitals are so regularly targeted by these kinds of cyber criminals?
Because they are hosting this sensible data on patients, so it's data that has a lot of value, and it has a high privacy value in there, right? And it's also kind of a public entity, right? So we are talking about a service that usually is offered by a country, right? By the public sector. So if you get that data, you have a lot of power, not to negotiate and to ask for money, because the whole country gets in attacked, so to speak. It's not just a private organization that affects one business, but it affects the population, right? It's public data at the end of the day. Yeah.
Is there any way that they can work to recover the data of Hospital Clínic without paying?
I think what they are doing is trying to monitor what is happening on the internet, right? So they are trying to monitor anything that can be suspicious of some kind of system trying to deliver that data to the public, right? And try to delete it as soon as it happens. But it's not easy, because it's something that it's complex and we don't know where the data is exactly, of course, etc. So I think it's a situation that it's serious and very difficult to solve.
What can we as an individual do in order to minimize the risk?
The probabilities that this will happen to your hospital or your organization are quite small, but if it happens, the damage is huge, right? So it's this type of trade-off. But at the end, the solution is to invest more, right? There are companies that are specialized in protecting those systems organizations, and it's a matter of investing. There are some simple techniques like phishing, which are used quite extensively, and that is pretty easy to avoid if people would know about them, right? This is those websites that emulate some other kind of website, and then you put your credentials to log in to the system as you always do, but actually that website is a copy of the original one, right? This is used for hacking in banks, etc. And this is something that with a little bit of education and information on that topic, it can be very easily solved. But at the end of the day, I think we have to see it as in the offline world, right? We are not always 100% safe on the offline world, right? And in computers and in networks, it will be always the same. There will be always some kind of risk, right? It's impossible to mitigate at 100% all the potential risks that we may be in.
Marc Torrens from ESADE Business School, our thanks to him. So, Cillian, we've seen this cyber attack has caused chaos in the hospital, operations cancelled, a huge $1 million ransom. But according to Ransom House, they're the good guys. They say, okay, we've discovered that there's a bit of a gap in your security system. So for a small fee, we can let you know how to fix that, and we can return all your data for you. We're just doing a public service here to protect the patients and everything. So it's
some sort of mental gymnastics that they're doing for sure.
Yeah, it's there's this concept of white hat and black hat hackers, and white hats, it's like a cowboy movie. The white hat means you're a goodie, and the black hat means you're a baddie. So they think they're white hats, but it's obviously being malicious in terms of the fee that they're asking for and the damage that's being done to the hospital.
Yeah, preventing patients from getting seen by doctors. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think that that's the job of the good guy.
So these are Ransom House, ransomware attacks. Cillian, tell us what they are.
Yeah, so ransomware, it's a specific type of cyber attack, and it's, as is in the name, Ransom House, it's sort of the modus operandi of that particular group. Within this arena of cyber criminality, there are various different groups. David López told me there's roughly 32 known large groups in operation at the moment. And ransomware is just one particular style of cyber attack that can take place. Essentially, hackers find their way into the system of an institution, a company, or even an individual. This could happen on a personal level with one person's personal laptop. And essentially, they encrypt the data, they make contact with the person whose data it is, and essentially hold them to a ransom. Say, okay, I will only give this back to you if you pay me this amount of money that I'm demanding. Depending on the context, it could be more damaging to the victim here to either have their data withheld from them or even potentially published. For the criminals, they will take up whichever avenue is more damaging to the victim, and in theory, which will yield them better profits. And
speaking of the criminals, tell us a little bit more about who these people are, the kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to refer to David López in the interview that I did with him. He explained to me that it's another form of organised crime. Obviously, there's many different groups, but some of them may have come from different realms of organised crime. David López suggested maybe even arms dealers, maybe drug traffickers. But you have to kind of imagine here that cybercrime, for the world of criminals, they view this market as more profitable and less dangerous because these people, there's nearly never arrests when it comes to cybercrime, and everything is done remotely. This can be done from countries where it's difficult to detect them. So we here in Catalonia, a hospital in Barcelona is being attacked, but this crime could be carried out anywhere in the world. It could be the case that it could be next to impossible to actually find them.
And when the story breaks, or when, say, for example, Hospital Clínic realised on that sleepy Sunday morning that their systems had been infiltrated, that's obviously not the start of the
Precisely.
process.
Yeah, a ransomware attack, it doesn't happen in just one day. This is a process that takes quite a while. David López told me that commonly they begin by phishing. They'll get access to the system, and then it'll take days, weeks, or even months for them to find the important data, and then with whatever tools they have, to then encrypt that important data for the victim. After they've been inside the system for however long, the very last phase of the attack is when the victim realises it, finding out that their data is encrypted, that they can no longer access it.
This week, we also spoke to Tomàs Roy, who's the director of the Catalan Cybersecurity Agency. I mean, one of the interesting things he said was because the volumes of data that are involved are so large that actually once the hackers even kind of try and get hold of it, it's hard for them to move it, to publish it. So he argues that there is that window of opportunity that through collaboration, he was saying, with international law enforcement agencies like Europol and Interpol, that, you know, authorities sometimes have the opportunity to block the hackers from getting access to the data. Cillian, the Catalan Cybersecurity Agency have published some interesting stats about cyber attacks in general.
Yeah, so this is going to give us a bit of a picture on where we are right now with this whole world. Cyber attacks, they're getting more popular. There's been a 50% increase in 2021 alone compared to the previous year. That may or may not have had to do with the vast majority of the world spending a lot more time online. Plus, more than half of these attacks were directed against small and medium-sized enterprises. Globally, a ransomware attack occurred every 11 seconds in 2021, a frequency that is expected to increase to every 2 seconds by 2031. So this is a problem that we can probably expect to get a bit more familiar with. We're probably going to hear more and more about it in the coming years.
Looking specifically at Catalonia then, in 2022, according to the Catalan police, the Mossos d'Esquadra, there were 68,000 cybercrimes. Around 600 of them were ransomware attacks like the one at Hospital Clínic.
Yeah, to me that's actually a bit mind-blowing, like only 1%. That kind of shows how many more are taking place. I mean, ransomware attacks are probably the biggest. You know, they're the most dangerous. They have the biggest power to do damage. They can stop services at a hospital, for example. They can yield massive ransoms that are not paid in many cases. But it's only one particular style of cyber attack that can happen. In the past week, we've also had it confirmed that Killnet, which is a different group of cyber criminals operating from Russia, pro-Putin group, have perpetrated an attack on 4 different Catalan hospitals, Girona's Hospital Trueta, and 3 in Barcelona, Hospital Sant Pau, Vall d'Hebron, and indeed Hospital Clínic. And this is a very different style of attack that they're doing. So it's not encrypting data and calling for a ransom, but instead it's called a denial of service attack. And this essentially means that the criminals have flooded the operating systems of these websites with so many requests that has just caused the websites or their services to fail, to crash. This has obviously brought about problems for people who legitimately need to use these services, but it's not anything that's going to bring money for the criminals. And this group, Killnet, they've become very big in the online world over the past year or so because it's widely reported that they're a pro-Putin group. They have become more and more active in attacking particularly NATO countries and Western institutions that have been helping out Ukraine by sending arms or aid to Ukraine, which obviously is being invaded at the moment by Russia.
The Catalan Cybersecurity Agency confirmed that disruptions took place to 4 hospitals on January 31st. They didn't specify which hospitals, but local newspaper Ara here did. Another very high-profile example of a cyber attack that took place here in Catalonia is the Autonomous University of Barcelona, UAB. It was targeted about 18 months ago, the attack forcing them to disconnect internal networks and switch off the campus internet. Cristina Tomàs White spoke to the university's Jordi Hernández to find out more.
Barcelona's Autonomous University, known as l'Autònoma, is easily one of Catalonia's largest, with over 55,000 students. Located in Mediaterra, just outside Barcelona, it was also the target of one of the first major ransomware attacks in Catalonia.
El primer que es van adonar és que alguna de les màquines virtuals havia deixat de funcionar.
It all started on October 12, 2021, Jordi Hernández, an IT official at the university, tells me, when they realized that one of their virtual servers had stopped working. Well, it actually started before then. Hackers had likely infiltrated their servers 8 to 10 days beforehand.
La primera màquina, estendre.
As soon as the university noticed what was going on, they got in touch with cybersecurity experts and instated a 2-day blackout in an effort to contain the damage. There was absolutely nothing on computers or networks for 2 days, Hernández says. Most classes were still able to go ahead, but they were old school, only with chalkboards.
Nosaltres considerem que dels 12 milions d'arxius que probablement s'haurien...
The Catalan Mossos Police and a cybersecurity company that had been brought in to help out were soon able to determine, based on the clues the hackers left behind, that it was a ransomware group called PYSA,
Amigo,
an acronym that stands for Protect Your System, Amigo, that had encrypted 8 million of their 12 million files. It's hard to know who these people are exactly and where they're based, since there's a huge amount of turnover within cyber criminal groups. According to Hernández, both Mossos and the cybersecurity experts told them they looked closely at the language and the syntax they use for clues as to where they're from.
Poden donar una pista de quin país venen.
But the university never had any direct contact with them. They knew from the very beginning that they were not going to pay up. According to Hernández, the amount they were asking for, 3.5 million in bitcoins, was leaked to the press by someone who claimed to have had their sources, but the university had no intention of giving in. Instead, they used backups, which they have stored on multiple servers. And none of the 8 million files that had been encrypted, Hernández says, were confidential. As a public university, a lot of it was already publicly available: how they're structured, how they manage their budget, what services are outsourced, etc.
Les factures associades no són un secret.
But it still took them a while to get back on their feet again. It wasn't until right before Christmas that l'Autònoma was able to get the virtual campus, accounting system, and academic secretaries' management system up and running.
Per tant, la primera lliçó és s'ha d'invertir més en seguretat.
If there's anything they've learned from this experience, it's the importance of investing in cybersecurity and continuously updating their systems. Two-factor authentication is key to preventing hackers from accessing information they shouldn't have. But it's also important for people to keep an eye out for phishing and to be careful with what they see online.
Convertir la comunitat en una comunitat que col·labora en la seguretat informàtica.
Thanks very much to Cristina and to Jordi Hernández. Protect Your System, Amigo, the name of that hacker group. I don't know, these names. So it took UAB 4 days to secure a valid backup. I suppose that's the key thing. Once they're able to back everything up. That's, they can start again. The Wi-Fi network was back after 1 week, but I mean, the attack did have an impact on various services for months, in terms of, I don't know, even getting a book out of a library and stuff. Took them until early January until that was up and running again. In the end, the Catalan government gave an extra €3.5 million to the university, over €2 million to spend on new computers, and $500,000 on specialised cyber attack response support. So I suppose even if, these public companies aren't paying out ransoms, still a cost to the public purse as well in terms of security.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to update these systems, buy new computers, as you said, ones that are not infected by the malware. But even this is a reactive kind of thing, obviously, but we're probably going to see more money spent on proactive protection, investing more in cybersecurity firms, because it's probably going to be more and more necessary in the coming years.
Well, tell us a bit more about what about the future. We've already seen that the experts expect attacks to increase.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all of the cybersecurity experts that we spoke to in the past week, they all agreed the same thing, that these attacks are going to get a bit more common as more and more of our lives take place online. Everyone agreed that there's no way of being 100% safe. This is a way of life that we're pretty much going to have to learn to coexist with. One of the experts, David López, compared it to COVID. It's just something that we're going to have to adapt around. We're going to have to assimilate into our lives. And I guess the answer is to protect ourselves in some way. So investing in cybersecurity, educating ourselves as well. I mean, companies and institutions, they're able to invest in things like firewalls to protect themselves a little bit better. Individuals can too, but education is a very important thing for everybody to know, both within companies and you and me talking here. Just being able to recognize scams, recognize phishing attempts, just to make sure that we're, as much as possible, not left vulnerable.
If you're not sure, don't click on that link.
For sure, yep.
And two-factor authentication, it's a bit annoying, but
that's one of the most important things, though.
Yeah,
I mean, if
as Jordi Hernández mentioned from UAB there,
everyone mentions it as well. It's one of the best ways that, especially individuals, but even it can take place within institutions as well. It's one of the best ways that we can protect ourselves.
And very importantly, always keep backups of your important files and data. We nearly lost past episodes of Filling the Sink when I dropped my external hard drive, but don't worry, folks. It's all backed up.
All good, all good.
Time now for our Catalan phrase. What's it this week, Cillian?
This week we've got jugar al gat y la rata.
To play cat and mouse, I suppose.
Very similar, yeah. I mean, that'd be sort of the English translation. Literally, it's the cat and the rat.
The play cat and the rat.
Yeah, it's a children's game where, as you might be able to imagine, one is chasing the other, trying to catch them. And we picked it this week because it's sort of comparable with the image of the authorities chasing the cyber criminals.
It makes sense. Jugar al gat y la rata.
To play the cat and the rat. Dr. Seuss would be proud.
That's us for today. Thanks again to everyone we spoke to this week. Thanks to yourself, Cillian, for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Lorcan.
Thank you, especially to you for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, please do. We'd love to hear from you. The email address is fillingthesink@acn.cat. We're back again next weekend with another episode. Until then, from me, Lorcan Doherty, and all of us here at Catalan News, bye for now. Adieu.